Coming from the great American Southwest, from the very low desert, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be to all my listeners around the world. I am your host, Lionel Tavares, and as always, extremely glad and blessed to be here by the Lord Jesus Christ himself. So welcome back, everybody, to the show. I'm very excited today. Those of you who have been listening to me for a while now, you guys know where I sit at with my beliefs in Jesus Christ, and lately I've been making a lot of videos going against the Catholic faith and some of the things that are just contradictory. I just kind of see it more now. The more I look into it, the more I see it's just an interpretation kind of issue and just adding things that are not there, like the rosary, it's nowhere in the Bible, and et cetera, et cetera. So I brought in the big nuclear weapon today, Gary Wayne, to break it down, because everybody else is never sure about what they say, but I know Gary has the confidence in it, and he's been studying this stuff longer than I was even a thought. So without further ado, let's move forward. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe on all our social media platforms. We're now on YouTube and it's growing. Thank you guys for listening, and let's get moving. Alrighty, welcome back to the Sabbath at Midnight. So I have a returning guest, one of my favorite guests, Gary Wayne. He is an author of 2 books, Genesis Conspiracy 1 and 2. He's a Christian contrarian, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. Gary, go ahead and tell us about yourself, where to find your stuff.
Well, thank you for inviting me to your show, and so happy to be here again. And I know we've done a lot of shows in the past, so
Yes.
Hoping that we continue to pique some interest with people. And for people who are not aware of who I am, yes, I'm an author of a couple of books, and I call myself a Christian contrarian because I tend not to accept what somebody says something says, or what they believe, or I have to verify it myself, and I want to know. So I want to know why I believe what I believe, and that number one makes me a contrarian. And on the second level of contrarianism, a lot of times it puts me against standard dogma, because I've looked at it myself and said, well, that makes no sense. It only makes nonsense. So
That's why you're on the show, my friend.
yeah, so not to be disrespectful, but it's and it's good to agree to disagree within the church, and that's how we learn. But we need to do it, respectfully.
Yes.
And we want to be careful. Just because we do disagree, I would still put some goalposts around some things, like I do on everything. Is let's not manipulate Scripture.
Yes, absolutely.
And let's not go in with preconceived conclusions. Because that's how you end up manipulating the Scriptures. So those are the things that I sort of focus on. And so, yeah, I focus mostly on prehistory and prophecy, and I'm not a minister, and I did not go to a seminary school, and I did not go to university. And so I'm a layman, and I learned everything sort of on my own, which again probably set me a little bit against what some of the standard dogma is. But what's the standard dogma? You have different dogma in all the different churches.
Absolutely.
And they have a different emphasis. So I look at the dogma as what did Jesus say? That's what I like to look at first.
Absolutely. And before I did the show, I did like a little preview video, and I said one of the reasons why I want Gary on this subject is because he tells you the information non-biased. Whether the information helps him or helps the person we're talking to, he's just going to tell you how it is. And then, whatever you do with that information is up to you. But yeah, that's why I have you on the show. And just a little bit, I wanted you to just kind of just talk about the Catholic Church. I don't know where we would start at, because there's so many things to start at. But my idea, however you want to take it, but I think we could start like at let's talk about how they say that verse in the Bible where Jesus says, "I will build this rock, and I'll build my church on it," or something like that. His congregation, he said, I believe. And they're saying that that's Peter and the Pope and the first Catholic Church, even though it wasn't around 300 years later. Yeah,
one wants to be careful that not to jump ahead on things. And so I'll try and be careful with this because we want people to get a proper sort of understanding. And so when we look at what's going on in the Bashan region, which is in Mount Hermon, where they're at exactly, the foot of Mount Hermon, And that's not by coincidence. So this is one of those very important points in history. It's a turning point, and it's a proclamation point. And so he's talking to where the Council of the Gods was located in terms of the Babylonian Council that we would look at as the most often talked about gods from biblical perspective. And at the foot of Mount Hermon is the gateway or the cave to Hades that Baal would go back and forth in between every day to look over both of his empires on the earth and his empires in Hades and Sheol, where the occult polytheist heaven is located. And if you find that a little bit surprising, then just remember that he is not even the chief of all of the gods. His council of gods answers to Satan, who is the prince of this world and the god of this world. And he has the deeds of the world for a little bit longer. In fact, he offered them to Jesus in the wilderness when he was fasting. And so we need to sort of understand this as the context, because Jesus doesn't do anything without a reason. I mean, he's the Alpha Omega. I mean, he's the Word of God. So he's there for a reason. We just need to understand about this battle between not only the visible ones, but also the invisible ones. So he announces this, that he's going to build his church on this rock. Okay, what's the rock? That's the big question that people want to look at. So it's a multiple set of meanings. So eventually that rock is going to be a place where God and Jesus are going to occupy again.
Okay.
And people don't realize it, that the original name was Mount Sion, as we would understand that from a Hebrew perspective, that was changed to Mount Haram or Hermon as the mountain of the curse or the accursed, where the 200 watchers took their oath according to the book of Enoch. And that in, Ephesians 4:8, as you link that up to Psalms 68, two of the most mystifying passages in the Bible for a lot of people, and it's like a Rosetta Stone to understand things. But in that, that's the time when Jesus is in the grave in spirit, because the spirit doesn't sleep when you're Alpha Omega.
Absolutely, that's right.
Right?
Yeah,
It
that's
just
right.
doesn't. The body was dead, but and he's in the grave talking to these rebellious spirits, disobedient spirits that were sent to the pit prison. And he's not only there to, announce to them, and this is after Bashan, of course, after the proclamation. He's not only there to announce that he is going to be resurrecting on this day, and that they had miscalculated it, as First Corinthians talks about. They wouldn't have crucified him had they knew about the resurrection, right? And so he's there to tell them that when I rise on the Sunday, your rebellion is officially over, and you are going to be sentenced to the lake of fire. And what I'm going to do to you now, as you link in Colossians 2:15, and you link in Psalm 68, and also as you look into 3 Peter 10, where we're at, you go to 12, and it's now talking about these powers and principalities that are the individuals that he's talking to. He's going to parade them. It's either to heaven or it's either to Mount Hermon to tell them that you're going to receive a mortal head wound in the end time. And then he parades them back by implication, because it's not them that are out of the pit prison, because they come out in Revelation 9. So just setting some context here, right? When I said it's one of the most important things in our history, it really is. And certainly the resurrection is the greatest thing in our history. That is our hope and our promise. And from that, it mentions in Ephesians 4:8 that this is the gift, and it's the gift of salvation that's underlined also in Psalm 68. And Bashan is the area that's located here in Psalm 68, where all this is going to be happening to making a spectacle of him through his resurrection.
Okay, it's kind of like he's kind of like showing off, right? Like, he's saying
Yeah,
like I'm the king. Your time is up. It's not if but when, and that's literally at the gates of hell, right? That's what
yeah.
trying to get set
Now,
up an image for the people.
now what I covered is literally you could do a whole show on it just walking through it because it's just so many
So,
interesting things that are in those connected passages. So this is the rock that he's likely going to be building his church on, but it has several meanings. One is what after he comes back, it's going to be the holy mountain again,
yeah, absolutely, yes.
right? Along with the holy city, but it's going to be part of the holy mountain.
And
That
be
was,
part when it comes back, right? When it comes from heaven.
yeah,
Okay.
because when you understand a rock is understood as not just a rock, but could be a mountain,
Yeah.
right?
Found solid foundation could be many things. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the true rock is Jesus. So everything is built on that platform. This is one of the locations so it's like a prophetic sort of thing being said there. And Simon Peter, Simon was his name beforehand, is now going to have his name changed to Peter, which also means rock.
Okay. See all that. See, I didn't know that. That's where
Yeah.
the confusion. Yeah.
So we have to look at it in all sorts of the meanings there. And so he's going to build his church on Peter, but that doesn't mean quite as far as people might take it. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, after Jesus was resurrected, you have basically a college of 12 in Jerusalem for the Jerusalem church that are trying to organize things. And of course, it's quite chaotic. And Peter is the leader. He's quite obviously present there. But once they get organized, and after the death of Stephen, then Peter is the one, according to Eusebius and others, but James, brother of Jesus, is going to be anointed and elected the first pope of the Jerusalem church. So
Okay.
he's going to become the bishop of Jerusalem. And these terms are important when we want to look at the understanding of what's going on there. And both Paul and Peter are not, I don't want to use this word the wrong way, but at this time, they're inferior to James as the leader. So James is going to make the big decisions. And we get that in Acts 15, where James is the one who makes the decision on the new laws for the Gentiles Paul is bringing in.
Okay.
And there's a quote that I use in book 1 from another author that, they said, James is the one who decided. The other ones were considering and thinking about what to do, but James is the one, and it became dogma. And so he's the one who actually lays the footing for the Gentile church. Paul is the apostle of the Gentile church. So those are the roots. And so after the death of James, you're going to have Simeon who takes over,
Okay.
according to church, and then Linus after that. But you have a destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 A.D. So James dies around 60 to 63 A.D.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you have a vacuum because you don't have a home church. You have the developing 7 churches in Asia Minor, and you have Paul and Peter who have gone to Rome.
Okay.
So Peter goes to Rome in about 42 AD, and he is doing the work there. So he's obviously, even at the time of the first bishop of Jerusalem, he's not running it as the Pope
Yeah.
would, right?
Yeah.
He's doing apostleship and taking the gospel to the Gentiles as Paul was, and they're actually there together for a period of time. And then you have the death of Paul and Peter in 60. Trying to remember what the date of that is, but it's about 64 to 67 is, I think, in there, if I've got it right.
Sounds about right.
Yep. So when we look at that, then we have to look at when Peter was in Rome, he established the Church of Rome.
Mm.
So he becomes the first bishop of Rome,
Okay. See, that's
not
right.
the first bishop of the church. So it's a nuance, right?
Okay.
And then uh, after Peter dies, you're going to have Saint Linus is who the usual second pope will be.
Okay.
And he rules to about 80 AD, from 64 to 64 to 68 in that area to 80 AD. And then you have Anticletus as the third pope, and then you have Clement as the fourth pope. Now, there's discussions as to that exact order, but it seems that Linus was um, the first one, and he's actually mentioned in the Bible. So, or I'm sorry, he's not mentioned in the Bible. Simeon was mentioned in the Bible. Um, so that's what we need to understand. There's two centers. One is the destroyed city that no longer has the Jerusalem church. So then you have the location established by Peter, and he's the Bishop of Rome. And then as the Gentiles grow and take over the church, and the Jerusalem church gets slowly pushed aside,
Yeah.
just in sheer numbers and no sort of sacred place that they can have their center, then the Roman church is going to take over as the Gentile church. So he's the first pope of Rome, of the Roman church.
Okay.
Now you can also say that would be just an extension out of the Jerusalem church, and I would agree with that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't make him the first pope of the Roman church, with Constantine at that time establishing it and changing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. I see what you're saying. So,
Yep.
Man, I lost my train of thought. So, okay. So, when you say that there was already a church going on before the Roman Catholic Church came about, what were the followers of Christ and the apostles? What kind of church, or what were they doing before the Catholic Church? Because a lot of people, the Catholics, tell me that the Catholic Church wrote the Bible and they picked what book was canonized, this and that, and that doesn't make any sense because, I mean, Moses wrote the Torah before the church is even a thought. So yeah, so my thing is to me is that who were the followers? What kind of church were they going to before the Catholic Church?
Yeah, so I mean, we are looking at an extension of the Jerusalem church before Constantine and before the assembly of the Bible as we know it today.
Okay.
So as Jerusalem was destroyed and as the succession moves away from Peter as the Bishop of Rome and into the successors, you have 7 churches that rise in Asia Minor. They actually become the center of Christianity for a while.
Okay.
And even up to the time of John. So we're talking 90 to 100 AD, because and we need to understand this for history. We don't have a letter that goes to Jerusalem. Why? They're gone. So whatever anybody says that those letters were written in the 50s, not possible.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Because otherwise you would send it to Jerusalem, period, right?
Absolutely.
And if you wanted additional ones, fine, but Jerusalem would be included. Jerusalem wasn't there, so no letter. But one did not go to Rome.
Okay.
Okay, so it was not at the superior position as the center of the Gentile Christianity at that time. And that will start to move with the size of the evangelism in the Italian area. And then by the time of Constantine, that's where they're going to establish the center. And then they're going to change the things at that time away from Jewish tradition.
Okay, yeah.
So that's when you get that true separation from celebrating the Sabbath, the feasts, and all of Sunday, being introduced as a replacement of the Sabbath. So now you're going to have, with this centralization into a state-sponsored religion that is going to bring a lot of Mithraism, or Mithraism, as some people would also pronounce it as, an Egyptian imagery into the church. That's where all the idolatry starts to come in. It's the significant change away, because they want to more or less look at themselves as replacing the Jewish aspect because they violated the covenant, right? So they succeed everything, they're null and void sort of going forward, which isn't really scriptural, but And I'm not saying Catholics are anti-Jewish. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying at that time, as you look at the things that are being done, that is what is going on. And so when we look at, let's say, December 25, for example, that's the birth of Mithra.
Okay.
Okay, this is Zoroastrianism. This is the religion of the giants. Mithra is the goat god that's depicted in Baphomet, means Father Mithra.
Oh, wow. That's
It's Azazel.
Right. Okay. His roots are getting pretty deep.
Yeah, so we're getting a birth date of Mithra that we celebrate the birth of Christ on.
Oh, wow. That's blasphemy.
So, yeah, well, it is just like moving the Sabbath to the day of Saturn, which is an allegory for Satan, or the chief god of the Babylonian council. So it's crazy, but and we don't even celebrate Easter at Passover.
And you would think with just what you said right now, that would be enough for the people that are going against the grain to just, okay, you're right, but that's not even enough for some people. So and I want to go even further. So another thing too is that they talk about how the Catholics wrote the Bible and they canonized it, but I find that far from the truth, because to me the Bible was canonized and it was the Holy Spirit as soon as those authors, the pen touched the paper. Yep. So I think
so. So I mean, what they're going to do is they're going to assemble the canon. So doing the Old Testament's pretty easy. They just have to go to the Jewish people and get copies of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Now, did they get them all? Perhaps, perhaps not. But we don't really see a lot coming out of Judaism that would disagree with that set of texts. Now, there's missing texts like the 70 scrolls of the hagiography that are missing from the original temple, but that's what they had and what they were using at that time. And so, not included in that was the Book of Enoch at that time.
Okay.
Because again, they didn't have it got lost or changed somewhere along the way, depending on who you talk to. Yeah, and there's lots of Greek, Ge'ez, and Slavic copies, and there's fragments of the original Book of Enoch, and it certainly, you can take a lot of words back to the Hebrew words that are actually Hebrew words transliterated in Enoch, but we don't have that whole manuscript to verify it.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what might have been added, changed, left out, whatever. So that's one of the books that's not included, but there is an old KJV Apocrypha that was less dubious than other ones that they might have left out. Let's put it that way. So they thought. So, but again, the issue is if we're going to collect the New Testament ones, then we're going to have to verify all of these newer scriptures. And you have the Gnostics rising up at the same time, and they're writing their own gospels, and they're taking Jesus into their belief system, but as a mortal prophet who wasn't resurrected, isn't the Word of God, but was an amazing teacher, right? And that's how they would look at him. And so they wrote separate gospels alongside the one. So that's what they're sifting through. And what they're sifting through at the Council of Nicaea and other meetings is, how do we verify this? How do we get the oldest surviving documents? Because it's an oral tradition for a while, because it's a disorganized break off new religion that nobody likes in the beginning, right? So, so it's difficult to do that. So they have to set up parameters, and they actually don't do that bad of a job. And I'm not saying they got it all right, because there's probably ones that they missed, but they needed to understand that it was not a forgery, that they could take it back to the specific writer, and that it was consistent with the other books they were going to put in and consistent with the Old Testament. And so those were the parameters. And if they couldn't get all of that done, then they sort of did almost different various degrees of Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's ones that they just sort of totally rejected. So when people are reading like the Dead Sea Scrolls and some of these other apocryphal and Gnostic Gospels, You have to make sure you measure everything against the consistency of the Bible. And where
Yes.
it strays, you want to be very careful with that and not use that as doctrine. If it's directionally the same, just adding a little bit more information, you're probably safe on that, but it can't contradict what's in the Bible.
That's my whole thing. So let's move forward and let's talk about those kind of contradictions. So another thing that's been going on in my head, or I just can't find one verse of it, is that in the Bible, Jesus is very clear. When they ask Jesus how to pray, he says, long story short, I am the only one that can go to the Father. So it's pray to him. Now, somewhere along the lines, I don't know where praying to the rosary comes from, where pray to the saints, and each saint has a special power for every prayer. Where does this come from? Because it's not in the Bible and it's not biblical. If anything, it's demonic, Mexican Dia de los Muertos type of stuff.
It's a sort of bait and switch. So you're not supposed to call anybody Father except for God.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now what they've done, and this is part of Mithraism, where the priest was called Father. That's part of that sort of conflation to create a state-sponsored religion that would satisfy the Christians and the polytheists to a certain degree. And so Jesus said, when you pray, pray to my Father as I do. So there is no intercessor for Christians except for Jesus, who is our Redeemer. So, but he still, even as that, I mean, he said to pray directly to his Father like he does.
Yes.
So that's what I would suggest people do, but I would also encourage people to pray in the name of our Redeemer, who sits at his right-hand side and testifies to his Father for us.
Yes, absolutely. So where's the confusion at, do you think, where all this praying to the rosary, praying to the saints? I mean, there's even a part in the Bible where the witch, I think she brings back one of the spirits of one of the saints, and the saint was just like, hey, I'm not supposed to be here. Yep. So it's just, there's so many things that could just disprove that. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the case of Saul, who gets a sorcerer because he's afraid he's going to lose the battle against the Philistines, and he's trying to bring Samuel back. There are obviously occult rituals that can bring the spirit out of the sleep.
Yeah, sleep, exactly. Sleep.
Yeah, to communicate with. But Samuel is clearly saying, as in his spirit state, after his death, that's not permitted. Stop. Like, you are accursed for doing so, and wants to go back to sleep because he knows, as a seer of God, there's things that you don't do. I mean, look at poor King Agag. I mean, Saul lost his kingdom for not killing Agag.
Yeah. Hey, just really quick, have you watched that new show, House of David?
I have. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Samuel, he's like just how I imagine him, just taking no nonsense kind of guy. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this intercession sort of aspect, there should be no intercessor for us.
Yes.
And don't replace Jesus with anybody. Just don't do it. I mean, I get that the people want to pray in the name of a saint, but they're not in heaven right now conversing with Jesus. The Bible says over and over and over, hundreds and probably thousands. I wanted to do a project one time to count how many times it says we sleep.
Okay.
I stopped. I was like at 700, and I'm nowhere close to being done. So it's thousands of times that it says that we sleep. And so the New Testament says there's a spirit, a soul, and a body. Ecclesiastics tells us that when we die, our spirit returns to heaven. So our physical body, which is of the physical universe, the soul in the body that the spirit merges with, that's going to decay and disappear. But the spirit returns to heaven in a sleep-like state, waiting for whichever resurrection you're going to be part of. So we need to understand these concepts. So a saint's not going to help you because they're sleeping. They're not.
Yeah, they're not there.
They're not there.
Or either. They're not in purgatory, that's for sure.
And for people who have spoken to what they think are the saints, it's not. It's a demon. unless
Yes.
they've somehow done a ritual. And we have to be aware that there is that possibility based on with Saul and Samuel. But that saint would absolutely not be taking their message to God. They're saying, they're going to say, stop this, because I know what's permitted and what's not permitted as a saint, quote unquote, and this is not permitted.
Yeah, and they're even kind of scared that is happening, because they probably think they're going to get punished or get in trouble by God, which probably something probably happened that we don't know about. But
Yeah.
with that whole thing that's going on, I mean, it
So,
sounds very simple enough, but it, you know,
yeah.
it's almost like I almost feel like when someone is, for example, people that are looking for Bigfoot or Dogman, they obsess with it, and there's evidence out there to prove that these things are real, but they don't want to look at the evidence because they want to continue to keep looking for it. This is how I feel about what's going on here, because I really don't think it should be that hard to figure this out, but it seems like it's kind of like locked into some people's mind. And I wanted for you now to move on to the next one. This one right here was a big one for me, because I know in the Bible, God is very against cannibalism, blood drinking. Yeah. And I was going to just move on to this one, John 6:53, when they talk about the Eucharist. And I think that's being taken out of context.
Yeah. And it will dovetail into what we're going to talk about. So what happens don't use things like the rosaries, right? Don't bring idols into your worship. Would be my advice on that. And that the reason why the church gets away with it, because, as somebody accepting your confessions or raising themselves up higher than you and exerting their authority over you, and then they use that authority to say, only read the verses we tell you to read.
Yeah. Or they speak.
And if you have questions, you're allowed to ask, but if I don't like the question, I may have you excommunicated.
That's true too. A lot of people don't believe that. That used to go on a long time ago, all the time.
So, and that might be, a bit harsh in what I said, and maybe a bit hyperbole, but you can't question their interpretation, even if it's not biblical. Even if you can prove a passage that say you shouldn't be doing that, they're not going to listen. They're saying, hey, we are the new covenant. We are the ones that inherit everything. And so we can change the Sabbath to Sunday.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. It's crazy.
Yeah. And say, well, we can do that because that's the day Jesus was resurrected. But Jesus didn't give you that instruction. Jesus celebrated the Sabbath. The whole Jerusalem church celebrated the Sabbath on Saturday, and it only changes in the 300s with the Roman church coming about. So, and again, that's not being disrespectful. That's fact.
It's a fact. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can't get mad about that.
That's why we want to make sure we understand what's going on with the Eucharist as well. And also know that not only does this become a division within the church at times, but all these other things that we're talking about are divisions within the church, and the polytheists use that to seed even more division in the church and try and discourage your faith. So we need to look at this, it occurs, the first Eucharist occurs at the Last Supper.
Yeah.
At a time where he knows he's going to die. He's not going to drink any more wine after this, because he knows he's going to be crucified. And so, Matthew and John are, very, very good accounts. And in Matthew, he basically, he says, I want you to eat the bread and the body. The bread is my body and the wine is my blood, as a remembrance of me until I come again. And this is the blood of the new covenant, right? And Luke is very clear on that this is the blood or the bond of the new covenant, because it's going to be poured out. It's going to be sacrificed for all of the sins, right? That part's all real, but it's not the bread. It's not the blood. You should eat the Eucharist, but what you want to be part of Christ as the whole body is that, because he's going to give us a new body like his.
Yeah.
That's can go between heaven and earth, unlike the bodies that were before and unlike what the angels have. The angels have to create their own bodies. So Jesus was created as the Word becoming flesh,
That's awesome. Right?
at a little lower than angels, who was raised higher according to the Hebrews, and so will we, which is why we're the inheritors of eternity. So we'll have something they don't have as the angels, as being a little bit higher. And so it's an allegory and a remembrance and a celebration of the gift that he's giving us, salvation, right? And so in the book of John, it tells us to eat the bread and the blood to have life. And he who doesn't do this doesn't have life. And he who does do this will come for the resurrection. But it's the spirit of it which is more important than the physical aspects of it. So if you're in a situation where you can't do it, doesn't mean you're not going to be resurrected, but you can celebrate the meaning of all of that. And in 1 Corinthians is another passage that people would refer to on that, where they eat the bread and the wine as a sign of his death and resurrection until he comes again. So it's a sign. Okay, and there are very few things that are permitted that you can use in worship. This would be the only thing. But to confuse this, that we think that we're eating Jesus to have eternal life, or have to drink his blood continually to have eternal life, that's not true. Now, there's a fountain of life that's going to be attributed to us with immortality, but that's not the blood. That's a water aspect, right? Like you need to be reborn again in that life-giving water. So another allegory.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of I mean, when you're reading the whole thing, the passage goes all the way through and talks about it being a remembrance. And it also says many times in the Bible, like blood drinking, cannibalism, that's just all bad. Now, my thing is, to the people that believe in this, why would God change his mind on a certain thing? You know what I mean? Does that make any sense to me? And
and if they wanted, he wanted us to do this in a polytheist way. We would be eating an animal and drinking an animal's blood, probably a lamb, right?
Yeah, that would be. That'll go back to some kind of pagan stuff, and it's really that simple to break down. So, I also wanted to get into this whole blood thing. Now, a lot of miracles happen in the Catholic Church, whether they're good or bad, but a lot of the times the statues start crying blood. And to me, those are not good miracles. Like, that's creepy. You have a statue crying blood and bleeding blood. I mean, I think those are like demonic miracles that are happening. And this is where I want to go. I want to lead down this next conversation. All these apparitions of Mary that people see. The one I really want you to talk about, if you know this one, is Fatima. A lot of people saw it, but a lot of people believe it was a Virgin Mary. But you hear the stories from the other people. They didn't see no Virgin Mary. They saw creatures and aliens and UFOs. What do you know about that whole thing?
Well, Mary apparitions have been with us for a long time.
Yes.
And we want to be very, very careful with it. So basically, the description of Mary apparitions are very similar to the sign in Revelation 12. Okay. In fact, the 6 children at Medjugorje in the 90s who were initiated and also have set dates where they're going to come out and do catastrophic prophecies to convert to the true religion or will be destroyed from the face of the earth.
Oh, wow.
Set days when they're going to do that were initiated, and nobody could see them see Mary except for the 6. So, but it's the same description that goes on in all the other ones. And of course, whether it's Lourdes or it's Fatima or other ones, and in book 2 I cover off more of these apparitions than just Medjugorje that I cover off in book 1. This is the same apparition that initiated Ignatius of Loyola to become a knight soldier to change Catholicism from within to bring about the new Babylon.
Wow, interesting. Babylon. That's not good.
Yeah, so it was the Jesuits are the New Templars, and they were sponsored by um, the royal families, and particularly Francis Borgia, who
Okay.
is,
That is,
yeah, he's a part of the Pope line, and he is the head of the Montesa order. Montesa order was created in 1317 to take all of the Templar assets, so the church wouldn't get it. It would be controlled by the king. And so at that time, Borgia is watching Ignatius, and he loves his fervor, and he gets offside with the Inquisition. So Borgia gets him out of jail, and then sponsors him through his papal relationships to set up the Jesuits, and then becomes the third. Borgia becomes the third Grand Master or leader of the Jesuit order in 1565.
wow. Grand Master, that means he's a Freemason or something?
Oh yeah, they're polytheist, absolutely.
100%.
And so, anyways, I cover all of that off in book two and how the Vatican banking through that moves to Switzerland. But understand they're there to do what the Templars were supposed to do. So the banking is an important part, but the rest is to get a hold of the seminary schools and do all of the teaching and the education so that they can make sure that they've got their doctrine and interpretation that's going to run throughout Roman Catholicism. So they're part of all of this Mary apparition thing, right?
Okay.
Just as Joan of Arc had a Mary apparition.
And who is this entity that looks like Mary?
Yeah.
It's not Mary. Who is this?
So she represents herself as this woman in Revelation 12.
Okay.
And so this is not demonic. This is greater than what a demon can do.
Okay.
So, and she presents herself as the same description as Sophia in Gnosticism.
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah. So,
Yeah. And she presents herself as the mother of God and the queen of heaven.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the queen of heaven is the mother goddess in the various pantheons all around the world. Yes. So, and that would have been a mother goddess. Inanna would have been a mother goddess. All of the famous ones, Astaroth, Astarte. I won't use the one out of Egypt as a offspring goddess because that might get the show taken down with the algorithms.
Got you. Yes.
But you get the sort of understanding of that Mary has been raised within the church through several doctrines and transitions since about 500 AD to being the mother of God, which is not the mother of God.
Of course, yeah, because he created her. It's impossible.
I understand why that's said. She's the mother of Jesus, who becomes the soul and the body for the word to occupy, right? So that, yes. Right, so that he can sacrifice. So not the mother. I mean, mother of the Jesus part, but so it's an over an extension, and people want to be careful with that. And they have made her sinless and ascended.
I was about to ask you that. Let's get into the sinless part. Yeah.
And so nobody is sinless other than Jesus that has come. That's why he was the only one that could be used for the sacrifice. I'm not saying there weren't great holy people, because there were, but they all sin. We're human, right? They all fall short.
That would have to deify her, right? If that was the case, it should be. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. That's not.
So Sophia is the mother of the gods, the 12 archons.
Okay.
Right. So that's this Gnostic polytheist thing that comes in some of the language, and that you will also have, and you're starting to see around the world right now, you're getting the same apparition that doesn't call herself Mary.
Well, what's this one?
Hathor in Egypt and other polytheist goddess names around the world. So it's playing to each of the different religions.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
In a way that the terms that are being used are there. So do we get the Queen of Heaven term in the Bible? Well, yes, we do, in the book of Jeremiah. They were sacrificing cakes to the Queen of Heaven.
Okay. All right. Wow.
So I'm not pulling terms out here that, we can't relate back to the Bible. But the woman in Revelation 12 isn't Mary. It isn't a mother goddess. This woman is an allegory for the production or the producing of the 12 tribes, right?
Yeah.
That will produce Jesus, that the dragon is waiting to kill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So this has got nothing to do with what they're overlaying out of the Bible onto these polytheist concepts. But it has a very important role within Catholicism.
Yes, it does.
And that people are taken with it. And with Francis, a Jesuit, he has asserted complete control over Medjugorje now and recognized many of those apparitions.
Yes. And let's talk about how just a couple months ago he did these rituals where he's opening these
gates
and the gates. Yeah. I mean, how is that not enough for people to just, hey man, there's something wrong? And then he went on to say that specifically Muslim, Buddha, and he said a couple other religions, they all can lead you to God, to salvation. Yeah. He said that. And then at the same time, he had those transgender dudes dancing around. I don't know what that party was about, but I'm like, like this guy's pandering to the left, and no wonder why a lot of Catholics. Go ahead.
So when polytheists talk about the way, it's not the way of Jesus. They just draft that in. The way and the path in polytheism is the way of Confucius, the way of Buddha, the way of Cain, and all the ones that they believe that were sent to humans to help them develop into godhood. And whom they adopt Jesus as a mortal prophet as just one of those people sent on the way. So a great prophet, a great teacher, that's the Gnostic view on this. So watch out for that terminology, and Francis uses a lot of Gnostic terminology and a lot of double entendres. So you have to be careful, and he's changing a lot of doctrine. He's not Antichrist, he's not the false prophet, and he's probably not around for much longer.
Yeah, he's not.
But he has done a lot to move the church in that direction. And this is going to be a polytheist church. It's a mystical religion. So they're going to have to bring all of the religions in to the old religion to sort of bring that about. And so when we look at this, I kind of lost my train of thought here. What were we talking about again?
We're talking about the Pope and how he's
and the doors. Yes, those doors, creepy doors. So this is done on a Jubilee because it's the 25th year of a century. Well, biblically, a Jubilee is 50 years. So we're using a polytheist term for a Jubilee, that they separate the 4 Jubilees within every century, and the first one is the most important.
Yes.
So that's okay. I can say, okay, I'll overlook that. The Catholic Church has their own Jubilees. They've replaced a lot of things. Fine. I don't have to like it, but opening these gates, why are they opening gates?
Yes, why? I would like to know too.
Yeah, and Vaticanus Hill is an old Etruscan hill of the Sibylline prophecies.
Okay.
And a branch location of Palatine Hill, where the 7 hills of Rome are. And Palatine Hill was the home place of the Sibylline prophecies within Rome, so the main center of the temple. And that's probably where Babylon's going to sit in the end time. So now, 2025 is a very important year for the Gnostics.
Okay, why is that?
They call it the start of the age of the externalization of the hierarchy. The externalization of the invisible ones, the end time, and the time where Lord Maitreya will make his entrance. Lord Maitreya is Lord Mitra.
Oh, same kind of, same person, right? Yes. Ooh.
Same individual. And they're not saying the Antichrist will make himself obvious today, but it's that age where it starts. So the polytheists believe that they're moving into the end time officially for their Messiah to come about, their dragon Messiah.
Do you think things will speed up as soon as Francis passes away? Because he's like any day now.
Yeah, well, and things are already speeding up. I mean, if we look at something that I didn't think was going to happen, we see the geopolitical thing hitting up with President Trump, where I thought he might slow down the movement to world government. He's speeding up
Yeah.
another important piece in terms of the
So
10
scary.
beast kings that are going to be coming about.
Yeah.
For the,
And one thing that made me think the same thing is when Donald Trump first said it as a joke, then he was serious about making Canada and Mexico and South America one nation. That would be one kingdom, right? One of 10.
yep.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so he's working that very quickly. So, and I'm not saying he's Antichrist because I think he's too
Yeah.
old too,
Well, yeah.
and he doesn't have
That's
the
what I'm
right
saying.
bloodlines. But he's working the agenda.
Yes, and it's
And
sad because I hope
it's
he's.
very sad. Yes,
I really had hope for this guy. I voted for him all 3 times.
you know, I had great hopes for him as well, and I think he's doing some good things in the U.S.
Yeah,
But what else he's doing is not good.
yeah,
Not good from a and how he does it from a Christian perspective is not good.
it's getting pretty bad, especially with the whole thing. I'm hearing about these Noahide laws circulating now because he's so close with the Jews, and it could be some kind of religion where you're only allowed to worship God, which would be not Jesus in their mindset. But that's a whole nother podcast for another time, man. It's a long, but
It is, and the Babylon religion, which comes first, and you need that to bring about the 10 kings, will have ascetic dietary laws and then very ascetic laws imposed on the world.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's going to be. It's exactly how I see it. And
the Noahide laws,
yeah, let's talk
as they're named, I mean, they're literally 7 from the ones that we get, and they kind of, you know, comprise the 10 of the 10 commandments. But there's another set of Noahide laws as well that they'll use to pacify everybody, and they'll say, well, you just have to make these changes. But what's interesting about using the Noahide laws is now you capture Moses as the nexus point of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity.
Yes.
And they believe Moses was a polytheist.
Yes. I don't know how, but
well, because he was educated at Heliopolis, because he was adopted into the pharaoh family, became a bloodline high-level adept before converting, right?
True.
And even in Jude 1, you have at Moses' death, Satan showing up for the bottle to claim his legal right because he swore his oaths to.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense.
But he was there because God had a plan and a commission, so he sends Michael to trump that. So he can trump things if he wants to. So, but Satan has legal tender through these oaths that people take.
Wow, yeah, because I thought at first, I mean, I had a big old conspiracy in my head. I thought they wanted his body because his body was special, had some kind of ability. That's what I thought it was, man. I was on a sick one.
and we're told over and over in the Bible is don't swear oaths because you'll be held accountable for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean it'll kill your salvation, but you're going to be held accountable. So
yes,
then God can trump anything that he wants to trump. So when we look at these laws, expect the Assyrian laws to come in. Yes. And the Assyrian Jubilees to come in as well, which is part of the 25. So that's important to understand. And so when we look further at how they want to hit the time of Moses and the Noahide laws and the laws of Moses, which are going to be sort of wrapped into that same model of the laws around the world, is that all 3 religions look at Moses as being very, very holy, right?
Yes.
And what the polytheists say is monotheism didn't come about until the time of the monarchy, and the religion he brought was the religion of Egypt. So that's why the Essenes worshipped the religion of Egypt.
Okay. All right. I learned that's something new.
So that it went rogue. So that's what they're going to say. And they're going to probably bring out things like Akhenaten was actually Moses.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
They've got, that one.
I go through that in detail in book 1 because they have this complete set of revisionist history that they're going to roll out. But that's where you hit monotheism at its core and all 3 levels that you can start to wrap it in. And if you now just degrade Jesus to just prophet and mortal status, Muslims don't have a problem with that.
Nope.
And Judaism doesn't have a problem with that.
That would be where I would say the Christians would be the only ones getting the bad end of the stick.
Yeah,
Like,
and
we're
the weak ones will go
we-
along with it.
yeah, they'll give in. I already know the people around me that are going to give in. I can already see it on their face. But here's my next question for you now. I think this one's going to be a really fun one for you because I know you're great at this. You're great at everything. But let's talk about the vestments, the hat, the outfit, the stag, the Dagon thing. Some people see right past that. Let's do a. Can you break down this guy's outfit, this demonic little witch outfit he has on?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, that's right out of polytheism, all of it.
That's right.
The whole imagery. Dagon the god, I mean, the fish hat, right? Oannes, that whole ancient sort of history as a Babylonian religion.
Yes, absolutely. The cover of this podcast is going to be Dagon with the thing on there.
Yeah, so you're showing Babylon imagery for the embryo of Babylon that's coming.
Yes. Hey.
Using the terms of the priests and the outfits of the priests that comes out of Mithraism, which is a branch of Zoroastrianism, which was Persian and from the Indus Valley.
Oh wow, what a mess! All this stuff that's coming together. This is why I need you on the show. Like half this stuff I couldn't even chat GPT it because you're so ahead of the game. So this is
and Mithra was also the high god of Zoroastrianism.
Oh wow. Yeah, what a coincidence. Right? So.
And what's also interesting is Mitra in Indo-Aryan, the language of the giants, means a bond or an alliance or a covenant. And understand that Lord Maitreya is going to create a covenant for the last 7 years.
Yeah, with the Nephilim bloodline, correct? Yeah. So my thing is that I know a lot of mostly older people, I would say 50 and up, who are Catholics, but they are very good people. They pray the rosary, they do the communion. And they really do believe in Jesus. And, and some of the other things that the Catholic Church does, like pray the rosary, the saints, they don't do that, but they do believe in Jesus. They do go to the Catholic Church. My thing is that if you are true, let's say, John Doe was 70 years old, been a great person, not sinless, but a great person, follows the Bible, but, he goes to a Catholic Church. Now, let's say he dies and he was actually, ignorant to this, like he genuinely didn't know these teachings but generally had a heart for Jesus. Do you think Jesus will forgive that? Because there are people that they're genuine but they just don't know, like they don't have the ability to go outside of what they were taught. Does that make any sense?
Well, there is a distinction between having knowledge of God and Jesus and not. So in the book of Romans, for those on the resurrection of the judgment, likely in the second resurrection, they're going to be evaluated on the law of their heart or the law of their spirit, of what they believed and what they actually did. And however that shakes out, I leave that for God and Jesus. I'm just saying that's what the Bible says. For Christians, if you leave Jesus and you die, you're probably not going to be resurrected in the first sequence of resurrections.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So you want to be careful of this. But what I would also say is you can still be going to a church, believe in Jesus, believe in God, even though they're teaching things that aren't of God.
Okay, so I guess my example would be John Doe, 70 years old. He dies today, but he believed in Jesus Christ, but he literally never got taught or never been in a situation where communion was bad. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like an innocence of not having knowledge, I guess, like truly not having knowledge. I get it. Like if
you either knew Jesus or not, and Jesus says, "I never knew you" when he rejects you.
Yeah, that's
right?
the verse right there.
Yeah.
So going down this whole thing now out here where I live, it's a very big Mexican culture out here where I'm 2 hours from the border.
Yep.
And a lot of people celebrate this holiday like it's Christmas. It's called Dia de los Muertos. I just mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of Catholics, I would say all Catholics, celebrate this. And I used to have an ex-girlfriend. I went to her house, and this is one of the reasons why we broke up, Gary. Check this out. So I walked into her house like the fourth Halloween in a row. I got sick of it. Walk into the house. They have a shrine, her family, of these statues of the Virgin Mary, saint, all skeletoned out, all demonic. And I told her, we got into a big argument. I said, look, I can't be going to these parties no more, man. And it played a role in our breakup because I was really serious about it. But let's get into this. Let's get into the Dia de los Muertos.
Well, it is part of All Hallows Eve. And All Hallows Eve is the first part of over 2 weeks of the most important ritual of the occult. And so Samhain is what it's known in the occult. And so they have a wheel set up. A wheel is very, very important in polytheism. And in that, if you divide 4 into the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes, you're going to get 4 of those most holy sites or holy days. And then 6 weeks in between is when the other 4 are. Okay. So like you get Valentine's Day in the middle. You get May Day in the middle.
That's interesting.
You get Samhain in a middle of, September 21 and December 21. So this goes on till the November 11th.
Okay. See, wow.
Yeah. So when we celebrate the heroes of war.
Oh, okay.
With poppies associated with polytheism. So it's this when they celebrate the dead, right? It's the whole thing. They draft everything and then make us think it's a good thing. And All Hallows Eve is the night when all the demons come out of the portals and wander on the earth. So in Druidic lore, not lore, but in Druidic history, they used to, do talisman and things on their doors to try and protect them that night because they didn't want to be affected by these demons coming out. And Druid priests would go door to door looking for a trick or treat. Right? And so they wanted the treat. They wanted a servant to put into boiling water.
Oh wow. Wasn't there some kind of like sick, like the whole thing with the apple? Wasn't it like some kind of weird torture way?
Boiling water, you had to bob into it. Otherwise, you'd be taken and burned and taken the oil out for the lamps that they're going to light all around for these celebrations. And so if you refused, that would happen. And if you couldn't get the apple out of this boiling water, you had the same sort of result. It's kind of like the Wicker Man, right? That's what they're really, And so these demons would come out, and if you didn't offer up the servant, they would mark your house for these demons. The priest would to come in and haunt you.
Oh my gosh, this is
so
nuts.
this was a night of fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is when they come out. So it's the same celebration all over the world.
So what the weird thing you just said, and the people that are listening, I hope you guys are listening. They believe on that day, like you said, the spiritual gates are open, but the truth is, it's just a demonic gate. So in that sense, if that's
ancestors, that's their descendants of giants
family, it would be coming from hell, right? I mean, if everything's coming from hell, they don't get that.
Just think of the outfits that people dress up in,
like monsters, and nobody. But the thing is, Gary, I know it sounds so simple, but I get so stressed out sometimes, because I try to tell people nicely, hey man, like the Catholic Church, I'll show them this, that, and they'll just say I'm misinterpreting it wrong. And then sometimes I hear things that are so outlandish, it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. Like for example, this girl yesterday, she went on my Instagram, I made a post about something, and she told me that the Catholic Church wrote the Bible, and that the claim was so outlandish that I didn't even respond, because you're not going to get anywhere with someone like that who believes that.
No.
So that would be like the point where I'm at right now. That's why I wanted you on the show now, just for like, I don't know, another 20 minutes left. If you can let's kind of summarize everything that you said. So the Catholic Church was started, the roots of it were pagan. And then we went on to the rock. The rock symbolized something else, that the church was going to be there when Jesus and God come back. And he's also prevailing over hell's gates, right? Because that's where the Pan's Labyrinth, whatever you call it, right? So moving forward through all that, even with the Pope and everything that he is showing, he's definitely showing that he is not of God. He panders to the left. That's why I think a lot of people gravitate towards Catholicism, because they allow the gays. It's okay to do this. Okay, because right now, January 10th, I don't know if you know this, but the Pope has passed like 3 or 4 different laws to allow all this LGBT activity in the Pope, and he's doing it like before he dies. He's trying to get it done. So one of the things he did with January 10th was he allowed gay men to pursue priesthood. And then the bishop that he put as head bishop, his name is Robert McLeroy, I think. He is an openly outspoken homosexual, LGBT, anti-Trump supporter, whatever. But the point is that everything that's going on in the world, I mean, people are dying, Christians are being slaughtered. Your concern is to make sure all the LGBT people are okay to be priests. Like, why wouldn't anybody see that as anything other than that's blasphemy? Like, there's so many things he could be worried about, but he's concerned about gays being in the church. You know what I mean, Gary? Like, where is this going? Like, at what point do you think people are going to wake up? Do they have to see a drag queen as the Pope before they open up their eyes? I mean, how far is this going to go? That's my thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens with that movie that came out last year, with The Conclave.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but it's on my list. Is it good? Pretty good?
Yeah, it's not a drag queen, but because they're not going to go that far, but it ends up being a woman that they thought was a man.
Oh, I gotta watch that now, man. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that literally happened too when President Trump, when he got his inauguration. You remember he had to sit through and watch that lesbian bishop preach to him. Right there, when I saw that, I was like, guys, that's your church right there. Aren't you guys gonna say anything? Like, that's your Catholic church, and nobody's bats an eye. And the thing that I'm hearing now with the rebuttals that go back and forth, instead of them saying, this is wrong, that's wrong, their rebuttal is, what's wrong with having a transgender or homosexual as a priest? As long as he's not having sex, it's okay. That is now the new mindset. Now that right there, Gary, is going to just open up so many bad doors, because
it does. Yeah. It's over in terms of and it's going to be preparation to accept Babylon.
Yes, absolutely. That's where it's going, because again, not once did I hear the Pope say anything about Christianity. He's always talking about the Muslims, and we need to combine our faith, something called Chrislam. They're talking about this theory now called Chrislam. And that would only benefit, definitely not benefit the Christians, because I can't see the Muslims ever getting along with the Christians getting along with the Muslims, and I can't see the Jews accepting the Muslims. So with this whole thing going, I think the Antichrist is going to come under the guise of some kind of Jewish religion. What do you think?
Well, it has to come in a way that's going to unite all the different religions around the world, because it's a universal religion. The woman sits on many waters, right? Okay. So it has to be a universal religion, and it's not going to be something like Islam, because they would never permit Judah to do the sacrifices on a wing of the temple. So won't happen that way. So it has to be a religion that folds in the 3 monotheist religions into polytheism, which is why they'll hit it at Moses, right?
So, and just really quick, what is your theory then? It'll be like a Moses, some type of Moses Noahide type of thing.
Yep. Yeah, it will be exactly. It will be, just picture what the Essenes were like. It's going to be like that, the old Essenes, and they worship fallen angels, and so it's and we're going to see brother turn against brother, a neighbor against neighbor, in the tribulation that Babylon causes. And what happens is those who know the Bible are going to stand up so strongly, they're going to have to persecute them.
Oh man, that's where the beheadings start, right?
Well, no, that's later.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
can't wait.
You have the blood of the saints on Babylon, and you have the 10 days of tribulation that didn't happen in the time of the 7 churches. And so you've got tribulation before the last 7 years. So you're going to have trouble as Babylon's coming to power with the false prophets that come along first to make the way. And then you're going to see the martyred saints resurrected as part of the first fruits that are shown in Revelation 6. They're told to wait a little longer, which will be 3.5 years. So they're waiting for those who are going to die for the testimony of Jesus, just as they did. And that's before Antichrist.
That's all before the main show. Jeez, there's a lot. Yeah. So that's a lot that has to happen, because a lot of people, they're talking, they don't know their Bible because they think Donald Trump's the Antichrist. Not even close. Because he got that little bullet that cut his ear. They think that's
his ear. That's not a mortal head wound.
Boom. Exactly. Thank you. No one knows what mortal means, I guess. But so that whole thing with Trump, nothing to do with the Antichrist, in my opinion. So my next question would be, Gary, the United States, Israel, the Vatican, how is that all going to work one day? Like, what do you think? Like, I'm really curious to know what you think about this, because you're a very intelligent man. At some point, America is always going to be the epicenter of something that's going on in the world. Like, people look at America as the leaders of the world, whether you like it or not. You know, everybody's going for Trump around the world, right? And then you got the Vatican that going against Trump and everything that he does. We have 4 years. It's a lot happened in 4 years. And then you have this whole thing with Israel and the Middle East. Something's going to give, and then Russia, and you have China involved. I mean, what is your opinion on this before 2030? Do you think things are going to start hitting the fan, like really hitting the fan?
We are in the fig tree generation that Jesus talks about in, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they're getting stronger. We're not in the last 7 years, but we're in the periods where you're going to have wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, famine, and earthquakes continually get stronger and more often. And you're going to have catastrophes to bring things about, and that's going to include the wars. And all of those catastrophes kind of work interchangeably and together. So you're going to have wars break out as we get the geopolitical 10 empires setting up around the world.
And how's that looking right now? Can you kind of see what's already coming together?
Yeah, I mean, things never happen the way that you think. So you can sort of imagine things 20 years ago and say, okay, I think it's 10, it's 10 groups of nations that are going to be separate empires. What would those groups look like? And I think you would be very sort of generally close, but not specifically accurate. So, I mean, 20 years ago when I was telling people about this, and 30 years ago now, I guess, is that I kind of had Canada, US, and Mexico together.
Yeah, that's probably what I saw too. The Amero.
Yeah, but what I didn't see coming, and I didn't put into my mind mix on it, was the UK leaving Europe in terms of the EEC, which now opens up something else. Now you see what Trump's doing. So you're going to see Canada, because that's done. They'll never be a friend of the US again. Yeah. It's generational now. It's so bad. Yeah. I'm in Canada. I know how bad it is. You cannot put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Oh, wow. It's done. So Canada's going to go Europe's way. So you might see something that would repair it, that would now include England, Canada, and the United States, and maybe some other Commonwealth nations, or you're just going to put the old Commonwealth together, and the U.S. will go with Mexico.
Interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah, which I wasn't my favorite bet before I see the geopolitical tectonics shifting right now, and Europe is. Trump is going to get what he's asking for, but not what he wants. So Europe is going to militarize, but the NATO alliance is going to split because they can't trust the U.S. anymore. Yeah. The problem is when the word of the president isn't any good, and he breaks treaties. Yeah. And he treats his allies like enemies. That's it. You don't fix that. That's done. Yeah, so you're going to see that, but I think there's a Central European economic community that Germany's probably going to lead as Gomer, ancient Gomer. It's not clear to me where France ends up. It could be France and a Western one.
France is the Middle East right now.
But France and England could go together with us as well, because of they'll say, well, we need to look after Quebec. We got to make sure the U.S. doesn't wipe out the French culture. So there's old bonds, and people also forget the head of our state is the King of England. We're part of his realm. You're not
That's true.
warring with just Canada. You're warring with the Commonwealth. So
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
would say, well, big deal. Well, guess what? France is going to come in on that because of Quebec,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So I see that happening. I see Russia as being a center of one of those groups, and he's trying to rebuild his empire. And Kiev is his ancient holy city, which is why he wants Kiev. Um, Xi is building his empire, but look, and there'll be multiple countries with them. So that's why he's taken Hong Kong back. He wants Taiwan. He's going to take Southeast Asia.
And they are.
Japan might operate another one in the Southeast area as well. South America likely is one. You're going to have a Middle Eastern one.
Uh,
How, right? And you're going to have an African one that may be part of the North African group, or North Africa might be part of the
and,
Middle Eastern group, right?
and you're connecting all these possible kingdoms, right? These 10 kingdoms. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good
And
way to look at it.
and remember, Antichrist is going to overthrow 3 when he comes to power and distribute the wealth.
Oh, wow. Which one do you think that would be, in your
The
opinion?
wealthiest ones.
Well, that would be America. Wouldn't be the wealthiest, would we? No.
Yeah, America and Europe. I mean, that's where the wealth is.
I would say, okay, I thought the Middle East had all the oil money, but
Well, they have the oil, but they don't have all the wealth.
Yeah, okay. And then another thing
Europeans
too.
have more wealth
Yeah,
that's
they do.
off the books than what, but the U.S. is considered on the books the most wealthy because of oil, because of a whole bunch of other things, industry,
Minerals, all that stuff. So, would you think that it's not a coincidence that America is leaning more towards not Canada, Mexico to partner up with this whole thing with Trump being more, pretty much doing whatever the Jews say over there. The president of Mexico is Jewish. You know that, right?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah, she's a Jewish. So I thought that was really strange. That
I thought her name was odd for the leader of Mexico, but
she's
so
Jewish.
be it.
She's 100% Jewish. She's an outspoken Jew. So what do you think? Do you think that I don't think that's a coincidence. I think this is like a whole takeover of all. I hate to say, sound like those people. It's the Jews. But when I stopped and thought about this, I used to work in Hollywood. Every person that was above me was Jewish. The people that are above them were Jewish. You look at all the banks, Jewish people. We're here right now. The president, he's bending the knee to the Jews. Then you got this Mexico president, Jewish, happened to connect with Jews. You know what I mean? So what do you think?
Well, the mystical Jews play an important role, but they're not running the show.
The synagogue of Satan, will that be those that Jesus said? The vipers? Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we look at Kabbalism, the Talmud, those things, they're part of the mystical societies and mystical religions, right? And you have a Jewish influence that's in the secret societies at the lower levels, but the top levels are purebloods. Now, for the Antichrist, they're going to want to have some Jewish blood that's grafted in.
Yes.
King David, King Saul, but where they get their true divinity from in their belief system is the spark of the divine from the fallen angels through the giants.
And do you think the Antichrist is going to be born through a woman or created? How's this?
Well, that's yet to play out. I mean, the families like the Anjou and the Windsors and others in Europe, if they get their way, it'll be one of their bloodlines, and they'll inherit the world as that royal dynasty. That's why you have these rivals all around the world.
To say, yeah. So everybody's kind of like on the same team, but not whoever gets there first, kind of thing.
Yeah. So Putin, for example, believes his grandfather or great grandfather was a Putyanin. And if people don't know who the Putyanin are, those are the original czars in Kiev, and that his grandfather was born out of wedlock. And so you get part of the name as Putin, but not the whole name. You get some wealth. And his father moved to St. Petersburg sometime around World War I, just before or just after, and that's how he ends up in Russia. So the Putyanin set up with Vladimir the Great, who Putin honors with this great statue, a branch dynasty, and it's the Putyanin dynasty until the early 1600s, where a Putyanin female is the heir, marries a Romanov, and you have a scioning. So the Romanovs are a junior offshoot of the Putyanin. And if you look at what Putin said in the interview with Tucker Carlson, he said, "I'm wanting to put back the Romanov dynasty empire.
Yeah, I heard him say stuff like that too. He's really into all the like the religion stuff. I noticed
Yeah.
he's all
So
into the ancient stuff.
so in China, the ancient dragon creator gods created 5 emperors, and these are, giants, and they produced a royal dynasty of the Shah dynasty, XIA. It has an eastern and a western branch. Li is the favored name of the royals on the eastern, Shi, XI, of the west. So now we have a Shi from the Shah dynasty in China.
Okay. And that's the name of the guy.
Yeah, and then
Jeez.
Yamato is I think from a branch out of the Shah bloodline as well in Japan.
Wow.
So look for more of these bloodlines to show up, but whether or not they're all bloodlines or there's some strong men in place in some of these ones, look for those military alliances and economic blocks coming together in the time of wars and rumors of wars. It's going to take some wars, just like you see Russia trying to rebuild their empire. It's going to take some war because, not everybody's going to roll over.
Yeah, eventually. I mean, how long until Ukraine? I think, like, why is Ukraine even being like? Trump said he's going to stop funding them, then he started funding them again. What's the whole point of that? I mean, what's the whole point of funding this little war? Like, it could have been ended so long ago. I don't even know what the goal is with that anymore, because Putin can take that whenever he wants.
Yeah, he can. Just how much he wants to throw at it, and how fast he wants to get it done. So Ukraine could never win. But I understand Ukraine's motivation: fight to the end, scorched earth, right? I get that, because
I don't get the holdup. That's the thing. I don't get what the holdup is. It's years already. This war decided on day one. I don't understand. Like, it's just like a big distraction to me, because it's all I hear about. Ukraine, your taxes, your dollars, your money, your food, everything's expensive in America because Ukraine. That's all I keep hearing. Ukraine.
Yeah, unless it's a tactic to drain the money out of the U.S.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. What is the point of this? Because this war is useless. And no offense to anybody that's fighting out there. God bless you guys. You fight for Russia or Ukraine. God bless you guys. But what I'm trying to say is outside the box. Looking at it from outside, there's nothing to be solved here. It's just nonstop wasting money.
Yeah. It is, and I think China and Russia and India are just draining, and Iran are just draining the wealth of the U.S. so that when they start to expand, it'll be on too many fronts, and they won't have any money to do it left because they're so far into debt. That's part of what I think is what they're trying to do. So another part that people and Americans probably don't understand much of this history is Putin has always told the West that NATO, Ukraine war.
Yeah.
That's my red line. And so right from 2010, when Biden took over that portfolio, he was saying to Putin, we're going to bring the Ukraine into NATO.
Yeah, I remember
that. And then in 2013, the Obama-Biden government, they overthrow the legitimately elected government that's pro-Moscow, and replaces it with the regime that we have today.
Yep.
So Putin invades Ukraine because of that.
Oh, all right.
Right?
Okay.
But then, Trump comes to power, and and Putin settles down. Whether he's ready to do it or not, I don't know what his motivations are. But as soon as Biden comes back, he starts to taunt Putin about Ukraine coming into NATO.
Yeah, what that guy, man. I don't even think that guy even said anything. Go ahead.
What they've done is they created a scenario where the Russians start we believe you.
Yeah.
So we'll just take them.
Man,
and it's also why he's destroyed a lot of the Ukraine. I don't think he'll destroy Kiev. That's a holy city to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too, I mean, there's a lot of innocent people. I don't know how much he cares about that, but isn't it in the Bible prophesied that Russia is going to start taking all it's going to take back old Constantinople? Maybe I'm confusing that. Maybe.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't really have that biblically, but Where we get Russia that we want to be concerned about is in the Revelation 9 war.
Okay.
Which is when you look at the creatures and the horses and the riders, it's the same creatures in Joel 1 and 2 versus Joel 3. So a lot of people think Revelation 9 and Joel 1 and 2 is Armageddon, but it says in Joel 3 that after that war, there'll be this Armageddon war. And then you have Ezekiel 38 and 39, which I think is the same war, because it's in the last days and it's before the second Exodus, according to passages within that war. So you have Gog of Magog, chief prince of Meshech. So Gog is nowhere in the genealogies in the Bible or nations.
Okay.
Magog is, as descendant of Japheth, but Gog and Magog were giants created by Iapetus before the flood.
Oh, okay.
So one wonders whether or not those are, some of the terrible ones that are recorded in Ezekiel 32 that are coming out of the pit prison as the worst of the demons, just in time for the war in Revelation 9.
Yeah, convincingly. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we look at this war of Gog of Magog, chief prince of Meshech, Meshech is the etymological root for the word Moscow.
Oh, nice.
Scythians, who settled in the Ukraine, also settled Russia.
Connecting all those dots, man.
Yeah. So look for that. Persia is part of that alliance.
Yeah.
Gog, and Persia is India, as well as Iran and Iraq and Kuwait and some of those other countries in there as well.
Jeez, man, that's crazy. I didn't like it's right in front of my face until you connect it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Gomer is Germany.
Yeah, that's it.
So, and they'll probably go with Russia on as things start to split, because they have to have the energy, just as India is going that way, because they have to have the energy, the oil and the natural gas. And Beth Tagarma would be Turkey, which is not happy in the NATO alliance as well. So I think you're going to see these fractures and these groups sort of, kind of coming into place to make this alliance look more plausible to happen. And you also have the North Africans in that alliance as well.
Oh, I don't hear much about North Africa at all. I mean,
so I'm not sure who they're going to be part of, but we certainly get them as the nations that are, settled into North Africa, as Libya but
I would definitely say towards the end times, I think U.S., China, and Russia are like the three powerhouses, if I'm correct. Yeah. I know there's other countries, but right now the focus has been on these three countries.
But look for a huge comeback by the Europeans.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the summary on that? What's the prophecy?
Well, because once they understand that the U.S. is no longer going to be their attack dog, which they're starting to understand now, and that they can't count on the U.S. anymore. And not that the U.S. is all at fault for that. I'm just saying from their perspective, because there's no doubt the Europeans would have stepped up a lot more, but they had this attack dog that they would just say, you spend all of your people's blood and all of your money and just do the wars for us. They have more money than the rest of the world combined.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all in Switzerland. It's all off the books. And they're going to rebuild their military. And they're going to become a force. A huge force.
You think that'll be by 2030? Because they have all those plans by 2030.
That's when they would like to do it, but it's hard to see all of that happening that quickly. It takes a long time to build up your military.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, one of my last questions for you is: do you think I will see the end times? I'm 36 years old.
Yeah, I think so. I think the odds are heavily in that. It all depends on when the fig tree generation started and how long the fig tree generation is, understanding it doesn't have to fulfill it. So we get 40 years in the wilderness as a generation. We get 70 years in the book of Psalms and 120 years in Genesis 6:3. So I think when Israel took Jerusalem, because it needs to be part of the Southern Kingdom as an epicenter of end-time prophecy, I think that's the kickoff, and that's the fig tree that Jesus is talking about when you see it in bloom. Judah in the book of Judges, in Hosea, other passages, Jeremiah, the fig tree is an allegory and prophecy for the Southern Kingdom, and the vine is the allegory for the Northern Kingdom.
Oh, okay, man, a lot of information. I would love to have you back on, Gary. Thank you for coming on the show and just clearing the air a little bit of what the roots are of Catholicism, and just, you just like I told you, man, non-biased. You said what it said. It says what it says, and we give you the answer. I really appreciate you for coming on and doing.
And I would say at the end is I don't think Catholics are evil. I think they're Christians. I think their leadership is very suspect. Yeah, but I could say that about a lot of Protestant churches too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing too. They always, when I have these conversations, well, what about that church? I say, I'm not saying they don't. We all do. But I'm trying to open your eyes to you. So that's about it, man. So again, thank you, Gary. Really quick, just for the audience, where do we find your books? On Amazon? Where are we going?
Yeah, so the best way to find my books is go through my website, the Genesis6conspiracy.com, the number 6conspiracy.com. And on that website, I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1 and all 84 chapters of book 2. If you wanted a signed copy from me, you can go to the Buy Now page, and there's 3 pages on the Buy Now page. Page 1 is just book 1 with discounts for multiple books. Page 2 is book 2 with discounts, and page 3 is the bundling page. So if you want to get one of each and get a discount, or if you want to buy, 7 and 3, you just name the way you want to buy that, and you get discounts appropriately for that. If you live in the U.S., there's a U.S. page. If you live in Canada, there's a Canadian page, and if you live anywhere else in the world, go to the international page. And if you wanted to buy from Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.ca, I have links up there. You go directly over to purchase from there. I have links for the Kindle version for both. That's available through Amazon as well. And also links for the Audible versions for book 1 and 2. And book 1 came out in early December, or book 2 came out in early December, and book 1 came out in September, and are doing quite well on the Audible version.
And I do own both these books, ladies and gentlemen. It is like reading the Bible. Every time you reread it, you learn something new that you missed. Very, very good books. I've read both of them, and I keep rereading them. There's so much information. It's crazy how much information is in here. But again, guys, thank you everybody for listening. God bless everybody. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow the show. I'll put the links in the bio for Gary Wayne's books. And I just encourage you guys to check it out, read it. Great cross references, a lot of things that you really wouldn't even thought to think about in the Bible that was right in front of you. So really quick, Gary, I'm going to play some outro music, and then just hang on the line a little bit, okay? So I can talk to you when we're done.
Finally, I feel alive, and I know why. Cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't want to hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul, and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ, and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed. That's right, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Even if I know it'll be making them hostile. Thinking about the persecution, never pop.